Hey Lids.
Hi, how are ya?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you. It's been a while.
Well, it has been a while, hasn't it? Shit. 1997, eat your heart out.
5 kids in between. And here we are.
It really are.
New
Here we are.
wrinkles, a couple of greys that I'm concealing, but really the same person.
All of my friends are getting greys.
Yeah, they're a bitch when they start to pop out. I just pluck them straight out.
I
Not having it.
bleach that shit over. Hey, when I told the Aussie girls that I was talking with you today, it was like their minds were blown, first of all. And some of the comments they made were like, holy shit, she's my favourite athlete of all time. And a couple of them, obviously we have like it's a squad right now, so it's not chosen, but a few ACL injuries that are, have come out, are in the middle of it. A couple, like one has just happened, and they call you one of their awesome, courageous legends that have made the epicest comeback from ACL. So they were just so truly pumped to have you, and I know you're so generous with your time. So thank you so much for letting us get inside the mind of someone who has truly achieved some awesome stuff. I think, when I think back to you as a child, because I remember you so vividly, in high school, you were, it's funny it's just when you get older that you start to realize things, that you start to look back on, particularly in high school as an older woman now, that you're like, man, there was just something about you. Like, you just had a different vibe, a different aura. You held yourself differently. And when I was really having a good think about you over the last few days, I was like, far out. You really were just different from a young age, and your achievements obviously speak for themselves. I mean, you're a 5-time Olympian, gold medal in 2010, bronze in 2014, the first woman to attempt a quad twisting triple somersault, mate. I'm stressed just saying that.
All the days.
I'm stressed saying it, and you did it.
Oh, mate, I'm getting sweaty.
I'm sweaty.
Just put back my anxiety. It's been nice not to have to fear my life for a couple of years.
Oh, I bet, mate. But you were always fearless. You were just so different, and that's what's going to lead me into it. But you're obviously also an entrepreneur with a wicked business and 2 boys as well. A mum that also was at your peak when you were a mum. You had kids. And it kind of takes me into the first question we always start with generally is, how do you start your day, and what are the first few things you do, which we were just chatting about. So please tell the girls what you are doing. Once an athlete, always an athlete, Lyd.
Well, I actually, this is a new thing for me. I'm transitioning and transforming myself from a night cat to a morning person. So I've just finished reading the 5 a.m. Club, which I highly recommend you read, particularly, I mean, if you're in Victoria, you're in ISO stage, like, just use this time to upskill, up your knowledge, read, absorb, take in, grow, learn. That's what I kind of am using this time to do, just to improve myself. That self-improvement, that's probably something that's always been with me, just wanting to refine and go, how can I do that a little bit better? And I don't know this information, how can I know it, and how can I be a master at it, or find someone that is. So at the moment, I have just finished reading the 5 a.m. Club, which I could not put down, and am implementing it. And apparently it takes 66 days for a behavior to become automated, right? So this rising at 5 a.m. and going through this process of, it's the 20-20-20 rules. So 5 a.m. you get up, and for 20 minutes you do really intense exercise. The first thing you do, and you like enough to sweat. And then the second thing you do is you meditate or you journal, and then, or you plan. So I've been using that time to really like do some strat kind of with my business and stuff, and just do that holistic kind of planning that sometimes you don't get time to do during the day because you're answering emails and you get stuck into day-to-day business admin kind of managing stuff. So I've been using that time to really just, where do I want to see, my business grow to? What do I want to do? you know, especially with, you know, new ranges kind of launching and products in the pipeline, and what's that vision, I guess, for that brand or the product. And then thirdly, that other 20 minutes is for some reading and some growth. So listening to podcasts or reading another book or whatever it is. So 20. But the exercise component, because I'm also doing this 60-day challenge at the moment. It's called Insanity. So, so I'm doing an hour. I'm getting my workout done in the morning, and it's a heavy one. And then I have a little bit of a yoga stretch, and then get stuck into like really good kind of business work without kids up. And then by the time they're up, I've already smashed out a really good, you know, hour and a half to 2 hours of solid uninterrupted work, which has been great. And then it's like bang into brekkie, homeschool, you know, and then have a couple of breaks during the day. I think I'm going to need a nap, so I should schedule in like I reckon a 2 p.m. or maybe after this. I'm like,
maybe exhausted after this, I'm sure. What's on your breakfast plate right now?
Oh, I like a bit of toasted rye bread with some avo and some cucumber and some cheese. Yeah, that's pretty much my go-to. It's pretty boring, really, but that's right.
I always like to know what's on people's plates.
Yeah, it's always good, and always butter under the avo.
Of course.
Always. And salt.
Love the salt. Always. So like I was saying, we went to high school together, and I do really remember you being so different. Like just even your body was different to what other girls look like. Were you aware of your body as a child?
That I look like, well, I still look like a 12-year-old boy. Is that what you mean? Yes. No, I knew, like, I've always known, like I was very muscular as a little kid, you know, and I had a body suited for gymnastics, you know, I was a little acrobat. I loved doing that with my body, but I loved, I guess, the more than like the aesthetics of it, I didn't quite care about. Yes, I wish I had, you know, I was a bit taller or I had some boobs or, you know, whatever. No one's perfect. But what my body could do was really cool. So I've always appreciated what it's given me and what it's been able to do and endure. And like, it's pretty amazing, you know, and you know that yourself as an athlete, but also as a mum, what it can do throughout childbirth and just pregnancy, and just like, all right, you know, I've actually used this body really well. So I really appreciate it. And it was definitely, as a kid, you know, I was pretty fit and muscular, and I agree with you. If I look back now at my younger self, I had a certain intensity and drive that, you know, I couldn't really describe, and no one really understood, not even my parents, you know. So, but I knew what I wanted, and that was always really clear.
How do you think you were like that though? Like, how do you think when you were a little girl flipping on a beam that you were like, I'm going to the Olympics one day? Like, where does that come from? Like, you had to have seen it. Were your parents like, you know, because when I think about being a parent myself now, I think, God, I put my parents through the ringer, man. Like, they were driving me to swimming at 5 a.m, netball every night, every morning. And we do it for our own kids, but it's like, was there something that your parents were doing that was allowing you to achieve, or was it just you always pushing?
If anything, they were like wanting to hold back. Like, they wouldn't let me go to weekend training. They wouldn't let me go to holiday training, because it was, you know, what they valued was family time and family unity, which I'm glad they did, you know. So it was always me wanting to do more but not being able to, or why can't you let me do this, because I need to get better, and I need to be able to do this to be able to go to the Olympics. And like, I knew what path I wanted to follow, and they had to catch up. It was like, so my poor mum, she was just constantly driving me, and you know, I had 3 older brothers too, so there was definitely you know, from my parents' point of view, they were really trying to always make sure that we were all treated quite equally and had the same opportunities. And so we all did music, you know, we all did sport, we all swam, we all had tennis lessons, and they were like a must thing, you know, they were compulsory, and then wherever you took those, you did, you know.
You were always unapologetic and strong-willed about what you were doing. You weren't one of those women or girls who diminish themselves to fit. You know what I mean? Like, you weren't interested in what else was going on around you. Like, you were just, no, this is what I'm doing. And
yeah, I didn't feel, and it's hard because you look back at the teenage years, and I was like, I didn't have time for all the other stuff. Like, and I didn't want it, you know. I didn't want to hang out at the supermarket or the shopping mall and go and watch a movie. I didn't want the latest Levi 501s. I didn't care about all of that stuff or fitting in. What I cared about was what I wanted to do with my life. And this is a bit dark. It's a bit crazy, but it's something that I realised reading this book, the 5 a.m. Club. And one of the lines really, you know, struck with me, because it was like, well, what will people say about you when you die? And no shit, I used to actually have these like memorials in my head. Like, I'd be sitting, this is weird, because I was constantly thinking about what would people say when I'm no longer here about me. And that's as a kid. And I'd play the movie. I'd play, well, she was an Olympian and she won a gold medal and she did this and that. And I'd play the movie. And I always thought it was a bit strange. It is a bit strange. However, after reading this book, I'm like, holy crap, I was on the right track, because
you were visualizing without being taught. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was always lived my life, or approached things that I really wanted to achieve with that kind of in the back of my mind. I wanted to be like, I wanted to do it in a legendary way, that something that people will remember. It's weird, but that's I've realised it this week. It's kind of a little bit dark and full on.
No, it's not. It's actually not dark at all. And I think that's why it's like so cool to talk to other athletes, because it is ingrained, I think, in the really great ones, that they have a real dream, but they have a real way of achieving the dream. And that's what you did. Like, you just had a way of making shit happen, you know, even with your business and with just anything you do. You're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing, and this is how I'm going to do it. And, you know, because a lot of people have dreams. Shit, I mean, you know, I think about stuff all the time, and it doesn't mean I'm going to do it, you know. Like, it's just crazy. Like,
it's the follow through. Yeah, it's the follow through, and that's what I guess differentiates people that are pretty good at what they do, and then others that go all the way and are able to back it up and have longevity and you know, reach that number one spot, not just once, but on multiple, you know, occasions. And that's what they're willing to do, you know, is a little bit different. It's all those hours that are unseen, you know. You got to be prepared to sweat more. That goes unnoticed, I suppose.
Yeah, oh, completely. So tell me about aerial skiing. How on earth did that happen for you? And I want to know the conversation you had with your parents when you said, hey, mum and dad, I think I'm pretty keen to be an aerial skier.
So you remember so I started off as a gymnast, and at a really young age, I was asked to go to the elite program. And obviously we went to school in Westbourne, and the elite program at that stage was in Canberra or in Cheltenham, which is on the other side of the moon. And so mum and dad said, no bloody way, you're not going. You know, we've got a whole family to think about. We're not moving, or you're not leaving the family to kind of fulfill this childhood dream of yours of going to the Olympics. And yeah, I think I cried for about 6 months, because I'm like, you don't understand. This is my chance. This is what I have to do. Like, if I miss this, it's gone. And so they didn't let me go. So I stayed in the national stream program, and, you know, won everything I could possibly win in that category, up to level 10. And then at age of 15, and you'd remember I got asked, I think it was after I'd won level 10 national championships, which is the highest you can go in that stream. And they asked me again at age 15, which is very, very late for a gymnast to get a second crack at wanting to go to the Olympics. By that stage, it was the Sydney 2000 prep and 98 Com Games were in Brisbane, I think. Anyway, so mum and dad felt very guilty that they didn't kind of say yes the first time, and by this stage, elite programs had popped up all over Melbourne, and this one was at MLC in Kew, and so I got offered a scholarship there, and mum and dad said, yeah, you can go. Like, I think they felt pretty guilty and just let me do it, you know. So that's when I left Westbourne, and mum was driving me to Kew every day to be there at 7 from Diggers Rest. So we'd leave Diggers Rest at just before 6, get to 7 o'clock training. I'd up my training from 14 hours a week to 32. So I was training in the morning before school, 7 till 10:30, and then I'd go into school after recess. I'd start my school, and then at 3:30 I'd be back in the gym until 7:30 and get back to Diggers Rest, sleep, repeat the next day. And mum was driving me. Like, she's just, if I think about what mum did, it's just like, I don't know if I'd do that. I'm mum now, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd do that.
Oh, I think you would, but I know what you mean.
But I wanted it, and it was kind of my last crack. And anyway, so long story short, it didn't work out. My body broke down probably within 18 months. I got really good, but just the load on your adolescent body, and it broke down. And so I stopped about midway through year 12. And at the same time, the Olympic Winter Institute had this idea of, hey, why don't we see if we can, we've got a lot of really good acrobats with not many pathways in Australia. Why don't we see if we can turn these acrobats into skiers and into becoming aerial skiers? And so I was like one of the first, it was me and my teammate Liz, who was a gymnast as well, that we were like the guinea pigs selected to trial this program, this pilot program. And it had, like, they had no idea what they were doing. They had zero structure. Like, coming from gymnastics, that was regimented. You knew what you were doing every day. They had this kind of, it was very, almost too regimented, to a very loose program. And I thought it was great. Straight away, mum and dad kind of, I said, look, I've been offered, this opportunity. I really want to go for it. They weren't going to hold me back anymore. They just knew that's what I wanted, and it was kind of what I was meant to do. And not that sport, but be an athlete, I think. I don't think it would have mattered what sport, but it was just that opportunity of going to the Olympics, and, this time the Winter Olympics, which was a bit different. And so I went for it and learnt how to ski in the first year. And the thing was that we were kind of in this really accelerated program. Like, what I brought from, I guess, the gymnastics world was work ethic, this drive, to what was kind of a very free-spirited sport at the time.
Yeah.
And I brought this kind of elite mindset to it, and they were just like, whoa, and just within 18 months, I was competing at my first Olympics. So it worked. And then the rest of the world started to copy.
God, it's so, like, I've seen your movie, The Will to Fly, a lot of times. And I rewatched that trailer, I reckon, maybe 12 times while I was back into researching for this. And it just brings me to tears. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my connection to you somewhat, or but even the players are like, far out, that brought me to tears. There's just something about the gut-wrenching process of becoming the best that movie made us feel it. Like, it was just so well done, and you were so raw in so many ways. Like, I just remember, and we've obviously talked about your mindset, but I just remember in one part you said, all that hard work that's gone in to get here, and I just have to go and do it all again. Like, you'd just blown your knee out, but you were still saying, I've just got to go do it all again, even though you were gutted. There was no, there was still no escape route for you.
No. And I remember sitting on the bed, like in Torino, where I blew my knee out at the Olympics in the semi-final. So it was quite traumatic. And it was traumatic because I'd blown it out 6 months before. And so made the comeback, made the effort to try and make it to the Olympics. Everything was going fine, and it just blew out again. So it was just so traumatic and shattering in every single way, like mentally, emotionally, you know, plus all the physical stuff that, you know, you're going to have to go through. But I remember sitting on the bed and had the doc around, and I knew at that point, like, everyone around me was like, oh, you know, you could feel when people start to write you off, like,
yeah.
you know, they start to lose a little bit of faith in you, and whether you're going to question whether you're going to be able to come back from this, you know. And so I just kind of looked around and I just went inwards. I went in again. I'm like, nah, I'm not letting this, you know, this injury is not going to, this is not the end of me. It's not going to end my career. So I just knew that, yeah, I had so much more to do. But at that point as well, like, I knew that that my process, something was wrong with my process. Like, I was fearless, yes, but I was also really reckless and you know, thrown into this sport that had very little structure and support. Actually, we had no one medically that travelled with our team, like, at all. So we'd get to World Cups and I was already beaten up and, you know, self-medicating with a bottle of Advil and trying to figure out what was wrong with my body. And because I was pushing hard and doing tricks that I wasn't ready for, I was constantly getting injured and taking massive risks. So my body was really suffering, and that was really frustrating, because I felt like I was inside this body that was at 30%, but my mind wanted to go elsewhere and my ambition wanted to go elsewhere. And I was pissed off because I was like, I train 3 times harder than anyone else, you know, like I know that I can do this. Why does this shit keep happening to me? And it wasn't until after Torino, when I blew my knee out for the second time, and then I started realizing, like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I want this. I know I could be the best in the world. Like, so I started reaching out to people then that could form part of my A team. I reached out for help. I said, I don't want to have this situation happen to me ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be in a situation where I'm disappointed and I'm underperforming and I'm hurting myself, and I know I'm better than this, so I need people to help me figure out how I'm going to do this. So I started working with a sports mental trainer, Jeffrey Hodges, who's one of my dearest friends. He's in Brisbane, in Queensland. And then pushed really hard for our team to have, you know, medical staff on full time so that they could help us recover from any niggles that wouldn't then turn into major injuries, and manage our injuries in a smart way. So in that time off, I just became smarter. And when I started digging and unpeeling all the layers of myself and my limiting beliefs, I started to realize that I had created every situation that had happened to me. Nothing was by chance. And at times I pushed when I should have been pulling back. I wasn't smart with my body. I trained hard, but I didn't train smart. And that was the shift. Once I got that, I was on my way. And, you know, we talked a little bit about transforming earlier and how I'm a night cat transforming into a morning person. Yeah. Well, I went from a fly by the seat of my pants girl, and I transformed into a list and a detailed planning person, you know. And that was how I was going to win the next Olympics, because I couldn't leave anything to chance anymore, you know. And I knew how to work hard. I knew how to train hard, but I needed to do it in a really sensible way, in a detailed and planned out way, so that I didn't burn myself out, so that I didn't put my body at risk, or my mind, you know, at risk of just overtraining, you know, and getting stale. So it was quite a transformative year one. I started a business because I was sick of, you know, the crappy, I had to ice my knees so much and couldn't find a product that would, you know, stay on and would stay cold and would stay in place without you having to hold and balance it there. So I started, that's when I started Body Ice. I made some joint specific ice and heat packs that didn't leak, that didn't slip, that stayed in place, and I could walk from the gym with into my car, and, you know, that would serve my need. And I figured a lot of other people were going through this as well, and they're going to need it as well. So I just kind of used starting a business as a distraction from what I was actually going through, which was quite a, you know, traumatic recovery experience. But it was great because it gave me something else to focus on and something else to develop in outside of sport. You know, I had a taste of what life was going to be like once I retired by being injured. You know, the same thing with childbirth. You know, I had to have time off, and you slip back into normal life, and you go, okay, this is normal life. You know, this is what it's going to be like.
So you were like, obviously that you went inward to block out the white noise in the sense of people writing you off, but you obviously you mentioned Jeffrey Hodges and visualization. Was that a huge part of it? Because part of the film was him saying like, you're visualizing being second, and so you're going to keep being second, and now that you're injured or were injured, the past doesn't equal your future. So tell us about the process of visualizing that. How did you do it? Was it daily? Was it, you know, you set aside specific time for it? Like, how did you mentally rewire your brain away from injury, basically?
Yep. It's a daily process, and it's almost like all day when you're an athlete. Yeah. These days, not as much, obviously, but such a powerful tool if you know how to use it well. And obviously, the power in visualization is drawing yourself or imagining with as much clarity and detail as possible who you want to become, what you actually want to do rather than what you don't want to do. That's where people, you know, start playing the negative reel of you know, whether you're a tennis player or whatever, and you've just imagined yourself slicing the ball or hitting into the woods off the golfing, you know, the tee or whatever, and that's generally, or hitting into the water, and that's then what happens, you know. So visualizing first and foremost is always visualize yourself performing or practicing or competing perfectly. And if you can't, step away, go back and slow it down. So it's just slow-mo it and see yourself in body, in person doing it. And sometimes it depends on the person, but, you know, sometimes with Jeffrey, I'd, you know, you'd almost visualize yourself sitting in a movie theater and you can see yourself on the big screen and you're watching your performance there. And then you kind of make it explode into tiny pieces, you know, like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when Mike TV goes into the machine and it explodes into tiny pieces. Yeah. And then you imagine it kind of, you know, going and eating it, like going into your body. And then you close your eyes and you start practicing and performing from inside your body's perspective, from your mind's eye. And so you play around with different submodalities like colours and brightness, and you want to see things in bright colour, not in black and white and small and over there. You know, it's got to be right in front of you. And then you want to bring in the feeling components of like, what will it feel like when you achieve this, or when you are performing at your best? Like, I close my eyes and I go in and I start getting like instant physiological responses, you know, and not to mention when you do visualize, the same motor neurons are firing. So your brain doesn't actually know the difference between imagined practice and actual. The same motor neurons are firing. So when you're injured, when you're in lockdown, in ISO, and you can't physically practice, you substitute it with mental imagery. And that's what I did most of the time, mostly through my career because I was injured a lot. But that's what I did to come back, you know, from injury, was to do different kinds of visualizations on, you could do a healing one, so you can imagine your body healing and working and recovering and rebuilding right down to the cellular level. Like, you need someone to take you through that if you haven't been through that before. But then you have performance visualizations, different ones. And the one that really helped me go from that concept of my past doesn't equal my future was the future self visualization, and that concept. And that is probably so powerful. Like, it's incredible. And if you can make connections with, I guess, your future self at a subconscious level, this is getting a little bit deep, but it's not really. But if you're in a relaxed state and you're visualizing and you don't have distractions around you, you can get to work on a subconscious level. And when you start to do that and you start to then imagine the future self that you want to be, whether they're 10 years ahead or 20 or 5 or 3 months in front, and you go over to them and you look at them and you see how they are, and you know how they're holding themselves, their body language, their expression. You notice them, and then you start to talk to them and you say, right, this is where I am now, Lydia. It's a bit weird.
This is
I'm here now, I'm going through these issues. How did you overcome them? Because you've already overcome them. How did you do it? And then you start opening up this dialogue and this conversation. And then it's quite amazing, because you'll come out of a session and you've solved a problem that you had, or you had more clarity on, oh, this is the way I am going to approach this problem, or this next thing, or this next step. And you keep having that conversation on a daily, like every night, with this future self. And you start answering your own questions, because it's your gut. You know what to do, but it's fleshing it out and it's asking and opening up that dialogue. Then you can start making the calls. And then I'd go to my team, right, I thought about this tonight. This is, you know, like next morning, like this, and we're going to do this today or tomorrow or the next training day. What does everyone think? Yep, that's a great idea. Let's go for it. So it's quite incredible. And then
really,
as you start,
I've never heard it like that. Like how you've just talked about, like talking to yourself basically, because you're right. Most of the time, you know, like I'm going too hard, or I'm not doing enough, or you know, all that stuff, don't you?
Yeah. And even just opening up, like it's about being honest with yourself, like, you know, and it's about exploring as well, because it's almost like choose your own adventure. You have thousands of possibilities.
Yeah.
You know, which one do you want? Which one do you actually want? Because you can manifest all of them. You can manifest, I can talk to the Lydia, the future self that didn't come back from a knee injury and that fell short, and she's got heaps of excuses. Why? Because she was injured. You know, that's a fair excuse, and she had back-to-back knee injuries. She just didn't make it back. That's one path. Or it's this other one that says, F you to everything. I'm going to go to the Olympics, and I'm actually going to do triple somersaults that women haven't done before, and I'm going to overcome this knee injury. So this is the path I want. So how am I going to make this happen? How am I going to become you, Lydia? Like it's so weird. And then as you start to plan and you tick boxes and you close the gap between your future self and your present self, it's almost like, you like an elastic band is just you feel like you're being drawn and becoming her. And then when you collide, that's the magic. That's pretty cool.
That is so cool. I'm so glad you explained that. I'm so glad I asked that question, because that is a whole nother area. If we've only just sort of begin touching on it, but you know, like you started with aerial skiing, there's no support. You know, we do have physio, we have all that now, but it's still, you know, not funded and all that sort of stuff. So it is that, you know, everyone has to sort of take charge of what they're doing to get where they want to get to, and just be honest with themselves. So I think let's just jump into your preparation, because I know a lot of the girls were quite fascinated in how you kept training when you weren't at the snow, and just how you managed that part of it.
Yep. So off season, so like our dry land training, so our season would end in March until about May. So we'd come home, we'd been on snow for 4 months. It's kind of like rest and recover, but then a lot of building up for our summer training, which is actually on a water ramp.
Yes.
So we kind of hike upstairs and ski down an artificial surface all day long, do the jump, off the jump, into a pool, swim out, walk up the stairs. It's like repeat, as well as lots of trampoline training. So the summer actually is quite heavy. It's 5 months from mid-May to end of September. And that was normally overseas, because we didn't have a training facility here in Australia. We've got one being built in Brisbane now, which is amazing. But we'd have to go to an overseas facility for our summer training, and then we'd be overseas for our winter season. So we'd be away 10 months of the year. And then from March to May, we were home. And that's where we'd regroup, connect with our families, anything else, friends. And then, dry land, which would just be a lot of like load bearing and weights, getting ready for the summer of walking upstairs, and hiking and jumping into a pool all summer. So for me, as my body kind of, it started to age, obviously, but also it endured a lot of injuries. So it always had niggles and it always had kind of these vulnerable points that I had to manage. So I found that Pilates really helped my back. I had a cyst in my spine at one stage that was making my right leg numb. So I used reformer Pilates that got me through that. And so I used to travel with a reformer and would pack it in a bike box and take it all around the world. And because we traveled so much, we had always had pretty premium status, so we could have extra bags and things like that because we would away for 10 months of the year, so I could tack it onto my luggage kind of thing. And then yoga became really important as I started to, especially after kids, but even before that, as I started kind of age really. And if it wasn't for yoga, there's no way I would have had that longevity throughout my career. So it meant that I had to do, like I'd have to do an hour of yoga before I'd start my warm up. Then I'd go jumping, and then I'd come back, I'd recover, go to the gym, do some more yoga, have some physio, do my visualization stuff and hit the hay. So it's like full-time. It's a full-time gig.
So how did you balance? Like once you had, Kai was your first, yeah?
Yeah, Kai was the first. So
how did you manage the balance of life? Like, did you just have to say, I'm not cleaning my house, I can't do this, I can't, like, how did you do it all?
Well, when I had Kai, like we were on the road. So it was always, we were in condos, or if we were in, hotels, or I'd travel with either my mum or my mother-in-law mostly, and sometimes my husband. But mostly my mum, actually. And she was pretty amazing in being there and helping. Like she would look after me as well as Kai, like she'd make sure lunch was ready, she'd tidy up, she'd do my washing. Like it was pretty sick, actually, traveling with my mum. So that was a big part of me being able to manage life as an elite athlete and a mum. But then I was also running a business as well. So when I think back now and what I was actually juggling and managing, I'm like, whoa. It seems like but I was really, and I think this is a really important skill for anyone really, because it's compartmentalizing, being able to just focus on one thing at a time, and being able to switch different priorities of your life off and on like a hot and cold tap. And it seems pretty cold, but it's how I manage. So you've got to have the support around you. So I had my A team, and I had my mum. So that A team got expanded once I had a baby, right? So you've got your husband in there, and my mum and my mother-in-law, and the people that were supporting me with Kai, but also then my psych, my physio, trainer and coach. And we were this very tight unit, and everyone understood their role. So much so that when I was going out to training or competing, I was LYDIA, had the athlete hat on, knowing that, my business is being looked after, because I had a team here managing things and I would get to things when I could. Kai was well looked after and loved and had everything he needed, so that I could then focus and go out and be LYDIA the athlete. Because if I was worrying about any of that while I was LYDIA the athlete, then, I could die. So I had to do that. It was very important that I was focused on just the jumping and not thinking about, when I'm skiing into a jump at 70 kilometers and going 16 meters in the air, I can't have anything else in my mind. And I really struggled when Kai was sometimes at training and I could see him in my periphery. That's when it brought it real, that holy shit, I'm a mum and I can see my child and I'm about to launch myself off this jump. Yeah. And so I had to kind of put like I, would tell my husband and my mum, I'm like, when I'm jumping, can you just put him in a place that he's not, like, I'm not staring, I can't see him in my periphery in the jump frame, because it would do my head in, like, because then that got blended, and that's dangerous. So compartmentalizing is just being able to focus on one thing at a time, and then I'd finish training, go back inside, and I'd play mum, read a book, not on my phone, not doing something, like learning how to just be present in the moment. Being where you're at is such an important skill in everything.
You feel like, I often think too, like when you see mums that are, we have quite a few mums in the squad, and, you think people often feel like we're sacrificing that part of us to go and achieve our dreams, but I always think of it like I was never sacrificing them, I was sacrificing myself. Like I was sacrificing parts of my life that they weren't in, that they weren't suffering through me trying to achieve something,
Correct. Yeah, and that's a very difficult thing to balance and make sure you've got right. And that's where your support team needs to be there. Your husband needs to have the buy-in and say, yeah, I support you doing this. Don't worry. You go out, get your exercise, get your training in, get your, if this is what you want to do. And I think just because you're a mum, it doesn't mean you lose purpose or goals in life. Like, I think you still should be able to pursue those, and the fact is that you can have it all. Like, if that's anything that I've learned, if you want it, you can have it. You can find a way to make it happen. You can find heaps of excuses for why it's not possible, or then you can point the finger and say, oh, she should. I had this quite a lot, don't you think you should get a real job now? And don't you think, now that you're a mum, you shouldn't be doing such a risky sport? And yes, it's risky to you, because if you went off the jump, you would die. But I'm so good at what I do. And I've been training all my life for it. And I know what I'm doing, and I know the risks, and I know how to manage them. So, well,
it obviously worked for you though, because from that, those injuries sound like a turning point for you, and then you kind of have to retrain your mind in a sense too after you have a child. And you got, obviously 2010 was before Kai, right? And then 2014 your bronze was with him there when he was 3? So you'd done all of your preparation with a baby and a toddler and you obviously, do you compartmentalize like literally your day now, like 10 to 11's this, 11 to 1's this, or is it just in your head?
No, I'm still not a schedule person unless there's like a schedule. But this, this 5 a.m. club thing, that is I am a better person when I have structure. Otherwise I'm a little bit loose, to be honest. Like, you would never think it, but like this, learning how to create structure and learning how to plan and learning how to schedule doesn't come naturally to me. I actually love being spontaneous, and I've always been like that. Let's just, I'll go for a surf now and do this later, and we'll travel now, and we like to pick up and go and not be much of a planner, whereas people have to plan 2 years out for a trip, some people. So yeah, it helps me to have some kind of planning and scheduling, and that's a learned thing, and doesn't come naturally to me. It might come naturally to someone else, but being spontaneous might not come naturally to someone else, or being able to pick up and go and not worry about what's going to happen.
That's a skill in itself. It really
take risk. Some people don't really feel comfortable with taking risk. Financially, or whether they've been got a business idea and they're afraid to leave their 9 to 5 to pursue it. It's what people are comfortable, what level of risk they're comfortable with, and comfort your level of comfort, you have to stretch it for it to expand.
Totally. Let's just dive inside your mind a little bit more here in the kind of messaging you tell yourself. So on the hard days, you obviously had days that were hard, like your body was feeling shit, you couldn't be bothered, you didn't want to get out of bed. What was your language? Like, what do you do? What's happening in here when those days happen?
There's a lot of I find like as an athlete, you're always trying to convince yourself otherwise. Like, you're always trying to find a way to manipulate the situation.
So true.
You know, and I guess that awareness is a big thing. Like knowing how to pull yourself up when negative thoughts start going on, when you start to kind of have these limiting thoughts like, I am so tired, my body hurts, tomorrow, you know, like not today, tomorrow, be better tomorrow. And there's times where you got to listen to that and it's smart too, but there's also times when you have to go, okay, this is what's going on here, how do I turn it around? You know, and that's where you learn skills. So, you know, you learn skills from, I've learned them from Jeffrey Hodges, but also guy that everyone knows, Anthony Robbins, you know, has some masterful skills in how to change your state in an instant, you know, whether it's getting up and smiling and breathing or, you know, asking yourself, you know, empowering questions like, what am I grateful for right now? What's exciting me in my life right now? What do I feel motivated towards right now? Because that, you start answering those questions, you start rattling off those answers, you are instantly thinking more positively, right? Rather than thinking about how tired you are. So that's what that was my go-to. Like you know, you'd get up, and especially even though we're an individual sport, often got team members, you know, where we travel and we live as a team, and you know, one of your team members gets up or they're having a bad slump, you know, and they're just negative all the time. And you've got to be able to deflect that and turn yourself around and not let that drag you down as well. So daily questions was a big thing for me. There's something you can just put on a post-it note, stick on your mirror in the morning when you're washing your face, and you know, or 5 a.m. when you don't want to get up, you know, and you go to the mirror and you go, what am I grateful for? Well, shit, I'm grateful for a lot. I have really, you know, beautiful family, 2 healthy kids, a healthy husband, house over my, you know, roof over my head, live on the surf coast where I get to go out and be in nature every day. Like I could go on forever and instantly I'm like, all right, what have I got to complain about?
Yeah, totally.
So that's how you change your state. They're little tricks that you use to convince yourself of thinking another way.
Yeah. So while we're on that subject, you know, this is a bad analogy, but I always used to find it fascinating when people would say, oh, good luck. And it's like, well, it's not really luck. I've actually worked really hard. And if it happens for me, then it's probably because of that. But then there's also that perceived notion of pressure, right? That people say, how do you handle the pressure? You're standing up on a jump there, you're at the Olympics. What is it that you mustn't feel pressure? You must be one of those people that it's not a pressure. The pressure's not the right word, right? Like explain, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. And you know, and pressure, all it really is you know something important's about to happen, you know, or you know you're building towards something important. And then ultimately at that point in time when you actually have to perform, you know, you can look at pressure as like a privilege. Like I used to look at it like, who said that? Billie Jean King. Pressure is a privilege, you know, and she was absolutely right, because you can let it squash you and, you know, make yourself contract, you know, and not have the performance and choke and do all that. Or you can take it on and embrace it and say, far out, look at the situation I've put myself in. You know, this is amazing. This is everything I've wanted. This is what I've been working for. This is my path, and I've chosen it, and I'm here and I'm ready. You know, you start convincing yourself that you've earned that pressure, you've earned that spot, you've earned it, and it's privilege. And now you get to perform and execute the way you want to. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes we all choke. We've all had those experiences before. And if anyone is honest with yourself, you know the thought patterns that you went through and you know why, you know. But then when you have those moments when you're in the zone and you've performed your best, you know, it's when you're free, it's when you're flowing, and it's when very little thought is going on. It's just those little cues, you know, that you've been training yourself to, triggers that you've been training yourself to react to, and everything works effortlessly and easily. And that's the zone that we're always trying to be in. You know, we can't always get there, but that's what we want. That's what we're striving for. So
that was an awesome answer. Holy shit.
don't know if that's a pressure question.
Yeah, and let's lead into that twist. Oh shit! How do you say it? Twisting triple somersault. That gives me full sweats just saying it out loud. You were the first woman to do that after watching the men do it, and like the only woman that was like, nah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that happen. Why can they do it and why can't I do it? Was it way harder than you thought it was going to be? Did it flow how you thought it was going to be? What was that mental process like of being like, I'm doing that, and then actually doing it?
Well, it took me 14 years. And I met a lot of resistance along the way. So when I first watched aerial skiing live and I saw the men and I saw the gap between men and women at the time, like, you know, when you talked about what gets you out of bed and stuff like that, it's, yes, you can convince yourself to get out of bed and change your state and all that. But if you don't understand your why or your vision or your mission or your purpose, there's different names for it, then you're kind of going, you know, it's like having a map without a destination kind of picked out. You kind of could go anywhere really. So vision for me was very strong. And if you ask me, like you know, when you were talking about me as a kid, it was that vision that was always strong. Like I knew what I wanted. I knew I could see myself in the Olympics competing with a gold medal around my neck. I just didn't know the how, the planning, the details. You know, that came later and I learnt how to do that. But I always had vision. And when I started areas, it was the same thing. It was like, I'm going to close the gap. I don't understand why the gap is there. I don't understand why women are putting limitations on themselves, because at that point in time when I started, you didn't have to do triple somersaults to win as a woman. You only had to do double somersaults. And so coaches and staff and administration will constantly say to me, Lydia, you don't need to take the risk. You could have more consistent results and wins by doing double somersaults and put your body at less risk than doing triple somersaults. And they're right, but it was not the vision that I had for myself. I was prepared to take risk and I was prepared to sacrifice small results along the way in order for me to get to where I wanted to go, which was to close the gap and do a quad twisting triple somersault. I wanted that. I wanted the gold medal. I wanted to break world records. I wanted all of that. But that's what kind of was my drive from going from Vancouver, where I won a gold medal. Yes, I wanted to win another one, of course. But more than that, and it became more apparent than that, I wanted to be the first one to do that, to close the gap and do the quad twisting triple somersault. And that was a milestone of mine that I'd set 14 years earlier. So it was there and it was strong and I believed I could do it. And there wasn't a good enough reason for me, around for me not to do it.
Is that what you're most proud of?
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of them for sure, because at that time, if I look back now, I was a new mum. It's my 4th Olympics. I'd gone through a lot of injury. I was running a business. I had a film crew around all the time because I was filming The Will to Fly. There was a lot going on. And all the while, I'm trying to preserve my confidence at all cost, and preserve, that the feeling that, yes, I can do it. Don't listen to what other people are saying, that you don't have to do it to win. Why are you taking these risks as a mum? Shouldn't you be, shouldn't you be behaving, I don't know, like a mum now,
Yeah, screw that. Yeah. It's so fascinating. So, when you think about all your experiences representing Australia at the Olympics and, what did it mean to you? Like, even now looking back on it, because I think, we were both doing it from a young age, it meant more to me the more times I did it. I understood it more the more times I did it. Is it the same?
Yeah, you appreciate it more, I think.
Yeah.
You start to appreciate, I definitely felt this towards the tail end of my career, that I started to really appreciate the opportunity that I had at being an athlete, the places that I was going, the people and the relationships that I'd made all over the world, and the connections, and the majestic beauty of standing on top of a glacier at 3,000 meters in the air. I'm looking around, I'm like, holy crap, this is what heaven looks like.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty much beautiful. So I started to just see a lot more beauty in everything, and an appreciation for everything, and appreciation for every uniform that I got, and started to kind of instill that, I guess, in the younger generation that were coming up underneath me, and just to enjoy the process, because you can get so stuck wanting to get that goal, but really sometimes you need to look around and go, holy crap, this is awesome. And that's what I hold. I cherish the life that I had as an athlete, and I've loved that chapter. But I also, I guess I also prepared myself for life after sport, and planned my transition well before I retired, so that it meant that, and how you do that is having other priorities in your life. I had a business, I had a home that we were building, I had, children, and finding fulfillment outside of sport was really important for transition and going into life after sport. And that's balance. That's what we all are trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And something that I feel like I really nailed it. I really got that, because transition for me was actually quite easy. It was closing a chapter on a sporting career that I gave it everything that I had. It wasn't perfect, but it was kind of imperfectly perfect, because it taught me so many valuable lessons. And it meant that I could close that chapter and appreciate and love it for everything it taught me, and move on and try and take those skills elsewhere and just live the next chapter, and that's been really good, because I've seen a lot of athletes really struggle with life after sport.
Yeah. So, you've smashed some glass ceilings here. You've done some, you really have created that memorial vision for yourself that you had. Like, you really pulled that shit off.
I die tomorrow. I hope some people say some nice things about me. And that's what it's about. Honestly, it comes back to that. If you can go to bed
if I'm still alive, I'll play this at your funeral.
Yeah, if I die tomorrow, like, I'm okay with that, because I've really given it to him.
You really do.
And
but for you though, you really sum up that space between good and great. Like, you really got there, mate. Like, you really pulled this off.
Oh, it's not perfect, but it's my story, and
it's your story. But you achieved what you wanted to achieve, and you did it. Like, you really got the most out of your mind and body that you could at that time. And that's got to be such a satisfying feeling. Like, if you think about that space between good and great, really, and I know we talked about it briefly, but what is it for you in there? Like, what was that thing that took you from, seeing the Alyssa Camplins to being LYDIA LASSILA, gold medalist?
I think being open to change and evolve constantly, because even the best need to be able to be better and to be able to have longevity. They need to keep refining themselves. They need to keep growing. So I think that's one thing. Like, once you get to a level, doesn't mean you're there and you'll be able to sustain it. It's about maintaining that how. Like, it's hard. It's not easy. It's about, I guess, what you're willing to do that others won't. Like, whether that's the extra, like I see it throughout my whole career, where like the extra numbers, the volume, the times when I like even sourcing a mental training coach, like that was off my bat, because I wanted to be better, so I hired him with whatever I could afford to pay him. And so I think it's about going those little extra inches to gain that some people aren't prepared to do, or find an excuse to do. I can't afford a mental training coach, so that's why I am not mentally strong. And we can all find an excuse.
Yeah.
I kind of use it like in business now. Like it's, you know, I'm learning how to approach business with the athlete mindset that I had as an elite performer.
Yeah. Let's talk about your business really quick. So Body Ice is awesome. Fun fact. Did you start this business in 2007?
Yep.
One of our, our GM, her daughter is also a squad member, and they both remember vividly she had torn her ACL and they drove to your house to get one of your Body Ice when you just begun. Still swear by it to this day. But it's so... Okay.
They've evolved a little bit since then, but yeah,
I bet. Like, just so many people know about it. Like, it's just so awesome. And now you have so many other elements to that business, don't you? You also, yeah. I didn't realize you did visualization. There's a visualization arm with Jeffrey Hodges, which is awesome. I'm totally diving into that. But you also have the women's sections, obviously the maternity, the kids section, but now you have the yoga business that you mentioned earlier. Tell us a little bit about, you know, the goal behind the business and what you're trying to give to people, because you've got a pretty clear vision there in terms of what product you're bringing and why you're bringing it, you know?
Yeah, for the newest business Zone, I mean, for Body Ice, it was always, I just want to help people recover better, you know, and that's from physical injury or from childbirth or a little toddler that's bumped their head. I just want to help them recover better and manage their injuries. And for Zone, it's not completely different, but it's like, I want to help people live better. I want to help them make their choices, and that's, you know, it's been really fulfilling to be able to create like a sustainable yoga brand from scratch. Yoga is something that, you know, it's a gift that keeps giving. For me, it's my medicine. So I want to give that and I want other people to be able to experience it. But I want to make sure that the products they use are, you know, just coming from it. They're authentic, they're durable, they're sustainable, you know, and yeah, so that range is about bringing in elements that are going to enhance people's spaces and practice. So we've got yoga mats, yes, that are made from cork and blocks and massage balls, but we've also got essential oils that are using the blends of only Australian native essential oils. So I've gone down this whole rabbit hole of discovering our amazing native botanicals that no one really knows about. So it's about then bringing that element there and just showcasing what Australia has to offer in the essential oil space. And now we're starting on apparel as well, on clothing.
Awesome.
That is hemp. Yeah, so Zone has a very it's very eco-friendly, focused, sustainable materials, but at the same time comfortable and function and durability is like at the forefront. So it's been really fun. I love creating products and just having planting that seed and then just seeing it grow and seeing where it goes.
Oh, mate, you are fierce, I tell you. I truly really appreciate the time you've given, but just even the nuggets of information in here, you won't even know how helpful it is for everyone. And we'll obviously, of course, all check out your website and all those awesome products you have. But mate, you are one of a kind. You should be so proud of the things you've accomplished, because we certainly are watching you do it. So thank you for being so generous.
Thank you. Thanks, Dace. It's just constant. I think constant challenge is what keeps me going, wanting to learn more and share it, you know, with others. I think that's the key. So thanks so much. I hope you guys have got something out of this.
Oh, we will. There's nothing surer, my friend.